Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 310 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is Give Yourself Permission. Our quote of the day comes to us from Joy Page. Dream and give yourself permission to envision a you that you choose to be. If you've yet to join the Positivity Tribe, make sure you head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever else books are sold to help us spread some positivity and grab yourself a copy of our new book, The Positivity Tribe. I'm always grateful when I get introduced to new guests for our show. Dr. Amy Bantham is all about being active, healthy, and fit, and she has been extremely busy herself, both professionally and personally, during this pandemic. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Amy, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks, Chris. I'm so happy to be on with you today.
I appreciate you being here. And the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
I am ready. I have to say, Chris, my personal mission, my company mission is to help people live healthier, longer, more active lives. And if I can do that every day, it's a day well spent.
I agree with that. And I think specifically where we are during this 2020 year of craziness and pandemic, I think that's something that we all need more of during these challenging times.
Agreed.
The number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you yourself had either a no-quit story or perhaps a really challenging time personally or professionally where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Yeah, I think the story that comes to mind, there are many, but this was something that I embarked on about 4 years ago. I decided mid-career to go back to school and get my doctorate. And I was in an organization that I liked, doing what I really enjoyed. And I decided to blow up my world. And I had always really wanted to go and get a doctorate. And I found my passion, which is helping people get more physically active. And I really wanted to get the training and the skills and the expertise to be able to have more of an impact. I was having an impact with what I was doing. I was working at the Fitness Industry Trade Association, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to connect the health and fitness industry to medical and public health communities. And I wanted to reach more people and have more of an impact on community and population health. So I left and I went back to school full-time at the age of 45. And I have to say, it was really challenging. I have been a good student in my life, but there is something about going back and doing something that didn't really come naturally to me. I don't have a background in public health, and here I was studying public health at a very advanced level. It was a leadership training program, so it was pushing me to really beyond my comfort zone. And so that very first summer, it was 6 weeks intensive school, morning till night. I commuted an hour by bike each way. So after a full day of classes, I would come home, have dinner with my family, put my kids to bed, and then I would start on this, 4 hours of homework. And I remember saying to my husband, the numbers don't add up. I can't make the math work to actually get through all of this. And I was reduced to tears multiple times during that first 6 weeks. And I kept saying to myself, what have you done? You've gone from this comfortable existence to just this chaos. And, I just pushed through, stuck with it. it got better. That the first 6 weeks turned into semesters where I had more and more control over my schedule. So I wasn't being forced to take biostatistics, which didn't come naturally to me. And just, I just I felt like I had to work smarter.
I don't think biostatistics comes naturally to a lot of people. That just sounds in itself something I would probably fall asleep during the first minute or two and wake up and have a test in front of me. So, I have to say that I think it's during those times where you get out of your comfort zone that so many of the incredible guests we've had have spoken about. That's where the growth happens, and that's where you go through that journey. And I think so many people look at that end result, and for me, it's what happens during that journey. And not to take anything away from obviously that end result for you, it was a huge culmination. But I think we just shared is those first 6 weeks and then going through it, and it's those challenging times where we learn to be better, we learn to be more efficient, more effective. And when you add a spouse and kids and a family on top of that, it's remarkable. So kudos to you for doing that. I've actually wanted to go back myself, and I have not had or made the time yet. So I've gotten different educational advances along the way and different courses and programs. So I appreciate you touching on that. It wouldn't be fair for me if I didn't now follow it up with just asking you to tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing today post going back to school.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said. I'm a lifelong learner, but I say that going back to school to get my doctorate was my midlife crisis. And I'm so glad that I did it, because it really it gave me what I needed to do what I did with my degree, which is to launch my own research and consulting firm. And I've been in the health and fitness industry for 25 years, but I really wanted to connect the industry to healthcare. And so my doctoral research was focused on physicians counseling on physical activity and prescribing and referring exercise. And then I was able to do some doctoral field work, which connected healthcare to communities. So intervening around non-medical determinants of health to impact health outcomes. And so what I decided to do with my company is to connect healthcare to health and fitness to communities to address chronic disease, physical inactivity, and obesity.
I think it's always unique how people put their own spin on it. And I think how you shared that the healthcare space, let's call it, there's a lot of things that people have spoken about improving. And I think during this 2020 pandemic, the question and challenge for everybody is, how do you stay active? How do you remain active if the gyms are closed and if different physical opportunities that were available to you prior to March of 2020 are no longer there? And for me, I've just witnessed some really amazing people doing some really creative things. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen myself and witnessed during these challenging times, the quote unquote normal of March, February, and January of 2020. And obviously prior to that, that's not available now. And you and I spoke last week. Things are just opening up around the country now, and I'm seeing people still being hesitant, and the weather is changing as well on the Northeast, which, during the summer and spring, it was easy to be active and go outside. But as people are coming into the fall and winter months, hopefully people will continue to stay active, stay motivated, but also be creative, because it's difficult to go outside when it's 5 degrees as opposed to during the summer when it's 80 degrees and sunny.
It is important to be creative. I'm a group exercise instructor, so I teach in the clubs, and I'm not teaching now, so I'm trying to take people's classes and reach that same level of motivation as when I teach myself, and I just haven't been able to do that. The other thing that I would add, in the early days of COVID, I would take my family out and we would be looking for places to be active, and all the parks and the fields were closed. So we really struggled to keep the family physically active. So absolutely the need to get creative. And we talk a lot about the connection between infrastructure and the ability to be physically active. And I think that COVID really showed that, the importance of communal spaces like parks and fields as a way to make physical activity safe, affordable, accessible for as many people as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too. And same thing with my kids during these challenging times. We were trying to get out and do things, and parks and fields were closed. And I think the one thing a lot of people made is, and it's something that I talk often, is excuses. Well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And first and foremost, safety and health is first and foremost. But it's not okay to give yourself that excuse. Well, the gym is closed, so I'm going to be unhealthy, or I can't go to the park, or I can't do this. So, once things open up back up, then I'll get healthy again. Of course, you can't have some of the same workouts and the same things you've done in the past, but you can still go for a walk, you can run, you can jog, you can ride a bicycle, push-ups, sit-ups. There's so many ways you can be creative. And candidly, I missed my gym, big time. There was nothing that I could duplicate outside of it that had the same feeling, but there was a lot of stuff and opportunities to be creative. An interesting question we ask each guest is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word did you pick?
Yeah, I was thinking about this recently. I would use the word tenacious, and there's actually a story that goes with it. I like tenacious. I think it fits in with the theme of your show. It's interesting. A friend of mine, a former colleague, actually did a reference for me and used the word tenacious. And I said, I don't know how I feel about that. It makes me sound like a pit bull. But on the other hand, I do think that it reflects what I think is important, which is resilience and sticking with things and not giving up. So I'll go with tenacious.
And I think to your friend's definition, and it does have that tough side of a pit bull, but there are some very friendly and loving pit bulls along the way. And I think it's okay to be tough and resilient. It's also okay to be kind and generous to others. But I think tenacious is a good word, and it's actually a word that I only think 300 plus interviews in, I think it's only been used maybe once or twice. So it's a good word that you selected.
Well, I like thinking about how to instill that tenacity in my own kids and having them not give up on things. And of course, we model our behavior for others, but times are hard right now, and teaching people not to give up when stress is high, anxiety is high, depression is high. They're challenging times.
I couldn't agree more. I think not only just kids, but also in general is having that never give up attitude, especially during these challenging times, because I think not that it's easy to give up always, but I think especially during 2020, since March on, it's a lot easier in many ways because we all have those quote unquote excuses or reasons why that things are uncomfortable or I can put this off. So I'm glad you touched on that. We often discuss and dissect the power of books, and I believe that reading is one of the most important things you can do. So I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you read recently, or perhaps you're reading something currently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I wish that I could show that I was doing really deep reading right now, but I have given myself the gift and the permission to read the most escapist books imaginable right now. I went through 3 years of only reading academic literature, and I then had the time to start reading again, and then COVID hit almost at the same time. And so reading fiction, even that had deep or sad or depressing overtones, it was just too much for me. So I am reading just the fluffiest beach reads imaginable, and I'm giving myself the permission to do that from now until COVID is over.
I like that. I think people find different things, and for me, I got into different movies and things during these challenging times, not only new movies that were released, but also movies that I even possibly hadn't seen at all or hadn't seen for years. And I think it's important to take that time away from this craziness and the nuttiness, and whether that's a fictional book or a comedy or just doing something out of your norm, I think from the mental perspective, it allows you to have a break. And I think that's one thing that I've seen a lot with my clients during these challenging times is the need today more than ever to just take a couple minutes away. And I was just talking with a bunch of my close friends this morning during the accountability call, is so many people are stuck physically in the same place. So because we're not working or because schools and things are closed, for the first time ever, people are sitting in the same place, the same chair, the same room. And I think sometimes you need to just get away and say, okay, I'm going to grab this book, or I'm going to watch this Netflix special, or I'm going to do something fun, because there are no games to go to. There are no parks. There are no movie theaters and plays and things like that. So I think goes back to what I said earlier, is you need to be creative and find ways to almost in some ways distract yourself, being like, okay, I'm still in the same house, but now I'm reading this book and it seems like it's a different house, or I'm watching this movie and yeah, I only moved one room away, but for the next hour and 10 minutes, I'm going to be just entertained and I'm not going to think about that living room or that office that I'm working in.
Yeah, I said to my husband in the spring, I said, I feel trapped. I mean, we're all here, we're all in the house. I'm a doctor of public health, so I felt really strongly about following to the T restrictions and lockdowns. And so, and we live in a very urban area, so we don't have a yard. We have a very small driveway, which we backed the car out, blocked it off, and the kids got to play soccer out there. But we were lucky enough to be able to relocate to a pretty rural area for a couple months this summer. And now we're back. And so, you know, I do feel less trapped, but I enjoyed being out in this rural area because I could go out for hikes. I could step out and see greenery. And so really saw nature and the ability to hike as being wonderful for my mental health.
And I'm glad you touched on the mental health perspective, because it goes back to what I said a little bit ago, is that people do feel trapped and you feel that you're in that. And the analogy I gave is the movie with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day. I know a lot of clients have said, you know, I feel like I'm doing the same thing, whether it's a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I grab my coffee, I do whatever, and then I turn on my laptop and I'm sitting in front of my computer for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And it's funny to make that movie reference of Groundhog Day, which is, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's a funny movie. There's some great lines in it, some awesome characters and actors, but it's how you get out of that. And to your point, I think and I always challenge people going back to being creative, is maybe go for a walk, go for a hike. You know, I haven't owned a bike, let's say, in 10 years. You know, maybe you go and you buy a bike and you use it, 3 days a week. It's just those little things that change the scenery. And going back to what you said, it's that mental health side. And I think so many people are challenged with that in 2020. And I'm glad you touched on that. So maybe a difficult question, but do you have a suggestion or two, maybe for any of our listeners that, even though we're, I hope, on the closer side of getting out of this, that are struggling to maybe work on their mental health, or is it going for a hike or something that you could possibly recommend?
Yeah, I always feel with activity, the most important thing is to find something that you enjoy. And that's how you're going to stick to it. That's how it's going to have an impact not only on your physical health, but also on your mental health. So for me, it's been the hikes. It's been taking walks. We have a university nearby, so I walk up to their campus. It's spending time with the family. I'm not super popular when I'm constantly suggesting hikes, but generally they'll follow along with me. And just giving yourself permission to take a break and not think about, I call it COVID time, because yes, I agree with you. It's like Groundhog Day and every day feels the same. But what happened 2 days ago feels like it could have happened 2 days ago or 5 months ago. And so there's this time warp going on. And I know that when I talk with my parents who are almost 80 and are home and being really good and taking the precautions and staying home, and I say, what did you do this weekend? And they say, oh, is it the weekend? Every single day feels like the exact same thing. And so really thinking about people who are isolated, but finding ways, as you talked about, creatively to connect with them. We now have 6 p.m. Sunday dinners with my parents and my kids and my husband, and it's a way for us to connect, and we just count on it.
Are those dinners in person?
Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom dinners, safe, socially distanced, but just something we can count on.
No, I love that. And something you said I just wanted to repeat is give yourself permission to take a break. And I have a follow-up question for you on that is, and I'm interested to get your answer to this, is I've found with a lot of my clients, even with sports teams and businesses and sales teams, there's never been a more important time to tune out from technology. And I don't mean in any way, shape, or form, you put your phone down on a Monday, turn it off, and you don't touch it until the following Monday. But what I've found so much, and so many of my clients and even friends are saying, you know what, I'm going to put my phone down or put it on airplane mode, or put it on mute for an hour, or put it in a different room. Wanted to get maybe your perspective on that from the medical side. Is do you feel that now it's such an important time to just take a step away from some of that technology and being connected 24/7?
I do, and I wish I could follow that advice. I have been terrible at it because I'm both starting a business, I'm consulting to a client that I've had for years. I've all of a sudden become a homeschool elementary teacher and trying to balance everything and doing a really not a very good job at it. And so I would love to follow what you described and what would be my own advice. And I really need to find some work-life balance. And it's just been challenging. I feel as a doctor of public health during a public health crisis, I feel this responsibility to do what I can to try to help. And so, in March, I started doing volunteer work to help my city. And they were working to implement a universal testing system. So to try to get as many people as possible, asymptomatic people who are essential workers who had to go to work every day, who didn't have the luxury to stay home. And so I worked for a couple months on a volunteer basis, helping them implement that program, leading a team of 30 volunteers. And in a happy occurrence, they actually hired me to do research for them and advise them on testing and tracing. So that turned into a great thing for my business, bad for my work-life balance. But again, it allowed me to contribute and not feel helpless during a really helpless and hopeless time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing your candor on that. And I think that that magical work-life balance, I think it's one of those terms that I think it's probably the last 2 or 3 years that it seems to be a hot topic. And I think during these crazy times of 2020, it almost got put to the back burner a bit. But now as things are getting back to normal, I think it's something that hopefully all of our listeners can take to heart, and myself included, is just tuning out a little bit. It doesn't mean tuning out for days on end. If there are people that can do that, kudos to you, because if I put my phone down for more than 15 minutes, I feel like I'm missing something. One of the things we talk about is going back and asking yourself, if you could put yourself across from your 20-year-old version of yourself and you could give yourself just one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say don't be afraid to take risks. I think I'm a risk-averse person, and trying to fight that instinct by launching my own business during such a turbulent time. And going back to school was a risk. And I'm so glad I did it. So I wish I'd taken more risks earlier on.
I think that's great advice, and it's something that as you get older, I feel we all take to heart more so as and I'm sure you've heard all the time, is when people are on their deathbeds, nobody says really, I took too many risks and, I didn't work enough. I wish I really spent more time in the office and being less risky. And it's the opposite. And I think it's good advice that you can take. But as you've done a bunch in the last couple of years, I think you're probably making up for it. We also ask a fun question. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Yeah, I think I would pick my grandparents. They've passed, and I would really love for my kids to have met them. It's so interesting. You see yourself in your kids, both for better or for worse. And I'm always telling them, oh, your love of science is just like my papa's was. And oh, you love learning French. That's just like grandmère used to teach. And so I would just love for my kids to be able to meet my grandparents.
We're going to change lanes now into what we call our hot seat questions. The only request we have of you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Last meal. You can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Anything Japanese. I love Japanese cuisine.
Favorite smell?
My husband's deodorant.
Ooh. Do you have an all-time favorite sport?
Soccer.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
Chelsea.
Favorite movie?
Anything from the 80s with John Cusack.
Oh, that's a wide range. What is your favorite app you have on your phone?
I've become very into social media as part of growing my business. So I'd say Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram.
And what is the background picture on your phone?
I don't have one.
Ah, that is awesome. See, you are the first. What is your all-time favorite book?
I would say anything by William Trevor.
And do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Not all those who wander are lost.
Oh, I like that. Who's that by?
That is from Lord of the Rings, and it is on my every day I wear a Life is Good shirt. And kids are the ones who point that out to me. I know adults notice, but kids are the ones who say, do you have anything besides a Life is Good shirt? And I have a couple Life is Good shirts with that quote on it.
I like that. So you talked about social media. Wanted to ask you a follow-up question. Is there anybody or any companies that you follow that are really putting out positive or inspirational messages that you'd like to possibly recommend to any of our listeners?
That's a great question. I really use social media primarily to be as informed as possible about health news. So unfortunately, the health news right now is not very positive and inspirational, but I am a voracious consumer of everything related to COVID and everything related to physical activity.
All right. For our listeners that would like to connect with you, follow with you, and also find out more about your new business, what's the best way for them to do so? And if you don't mind sharing your social media platforms as well?
Yeah, so I have all my podcasts. I do a weekly podcast with thought leaders from healthcare, communities, and health and fitness. My podcast is on movetolivemore.com. I do a weekly blog on COVID and physical activity, as well as a blog on connecting health and fitness to healthcare through exercise referrals. That's also on movetolivemore.com. And the best ways to connect with me are at Move to Live More on Instagram, and I primarily use LinkedIn and Twitter.
Awesome. And then the last question we have for you is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
I like our theme around giving ourselves permission during these challenging times. And I always advise clients, friends, family members to find the physical activity that you love to do and enjoy, and make sure that you find the time to do it.
I love it. I think that's perfect advice, especially not only during these challenging times, but when we get through this, is just find something that works for you and stay active and stay healthy. And I just want to thank you for your time today, and I look forward to connecting again soon.
Thanks, Chris. I really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you for listening to episode number 310. I enjoyed speaking with Amy and getting her perspective on quite a few different topics. Her parting words were simple, yet extremely important. During these challenging times, it has never been more important to stay active, remain healthy, and maintain a focus on our fitness. Is it easy? Of course not. Is it simple with the requirements to wear masks and socially distance ourselves? No way. But it is possible to stay active, remain healthy, and choose to be positive. So I challenge every listener, no matter what you are doing right this moment, when you finish this podcast, put your phone down and go for a walk. Get outside, get some fresh air, and do it for you. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.